Me too.
Oh, we're live. Wow, that was really quick. I expected a countdown. Hi, and welcome to the Warrior Moms podcast. I am your host for this evening. Tonight's guest is my friend Esperanza Sauceda, and she is joining us all the way from Washington. And if you tuned in last week, you would probably recognize her from last week's broadcast. That did not go very well, right? But we are now here with a new system, and hopefully everything is going to go great, and we're going to be able to hear Esperanza's story and then talk about some other great things. Of course, this is a live show. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to empathize with us. So we're here to help everyone feel like this is a community, because this is a community, and we want things to be stronger and better for future warrior parents who who join us in this fight and are scared and need help, and we want this community to be there for them. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put it onto the screen or to type it in, and when we have a moment, we'll address them. So all that being said, thank you guys for joining in. And Esperanza, thank you for being so patient and for dedicating 2 Wednesdays to me. Please tell us how your warrior story unfolded for us.
Okay, so it's my son's story. His name is Mauricio, and he just turned 13 on Monday, 13 on the 13th. He had his first seizure when he was 15 months old, and it was just one of the scariest things I've ever been through, because I knew nothing about epilepsy, and I was a first-time mom, home alone with him. And when I picked him up from daycare, he had a fever, so I took him home, trying to get him to feel better. And the dog started to freak out and bark and bite at me, which he is not a biter. So I was really thrown off by it. I didn't know why he was acting this way. And I turned to look at my son after, pushing the dog away, and my son, his eyes rolled back in his head, and his little body just started, going to convulsions. And so I didn't know what to do. I called 911, and within, when that happened, it's like time just stopped. So I could not tell you for $1 million how long he was in the seizure. It just felt like forever. And so I'm on the phone with the paramedics or with the dispatch, and all I could do was cry, because at that point, he's turning blue. He's completely limp. I didn't know what to do. And so by the time the fire department got there, they took him from my arms and they did CPR, and they were able to get him breathing again. And so that was our first experience with a seizure.
Oh my gosh. And I've said this before on the show with my daughter. I didn't know what to do when I first saw that seizure. And again, my child was blue, and every time I hear this story from another mother with a child who has epilepsy, my heart drops in my stomach, because I know exactly how that felt. And it's the worst feeling in the world. It is. I would not wish that. I would not wish that kind of just gut-wrenching type of fear. It's a fear. I mean, I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. It's a fear that I would not wish on my worst enemy.
Exactly. And then after it happens, a lot of parents are left with that almost like PTSD, where they're so scared for that next seizure, and it's almost like time stands still. Like, you can't enjoy the day because you're just so worried about what might happen next.
No, absolutely. We started the show earlier. I had you log in 30 minutes early today, so that way if we had any issues, we could take care of it. And my daughter was in here. And how many times did you ask me, hey, hear me ask her, hey, are you okay? Is everything okay? Are you okay, sweet girl? It's definitely PTSD, and I've had to go to therapy and really talk about this, because PTSD is something that's, I guess, for me, almost irrational. And so, to have these experiences and then have epilepsy is the fourth person in our family, and it's a family member we didn't ask for, and I'm sure you feel that way. So tell us.
Oh yeah.
tell us more uh, about your son, about Mauricio.
Okay. So after his first seizure, he had about, well, at the time, I didn't know they were seizures he was having after, because they became the partial seizures where he was just staring off into space. And so I thought, well, why isn't he listening? What's going on? And then an episode happened. I called it an episode at the time because I didn't know what was going on, where his body went completely limp and I was shaking him. It makes me emotional just to think about it. I was shaking him, yelling his name, and there was no response. And I just didn't know what was going on because he was still breathing, but he would, no response. And he was starting to turn blue around the lips, but he was still breathing. So it was really, eye opening. And I knew I needed to get him to a doctor. So at that time, we had just moved from the city we were living in to a new, one further south. And I found it, I had to find a new pediatrician. And so I found Dr. Blessing, and he was just that. He was our blessing. Like, I brought all of these episodes and all these things to him. And the one thing that I tell parents over and over is write everything down. Whenever there's anything about, with your child and medical issues, if you keep a detailed log about the time and the date and how long things lasted and how they were after, it's so much easier to relay that information to a doctor, because you're not, trying to remember and go back to like bad experiences and think like, how did that happen or how long was it, and not know exactly. So once we found him and I was able to tell him about the three episodes that had happened, he automatically was like, that's neurology. Like, you need to see a neurologist. And so he sent us to Seattle Children's, and an MRI was done. In the MRI, they didn't find really anything to do with the seizures, but they did find that he has a cyst on the back of his brainstem. And so that was something that they said that we should just keep an eye on, but he seemed to be, it wasn't affecting him at all. And so I thought, well, okay, well, that I still need answers. And so I kept asking, like, well, what's the next step? I didn't let it kind of just be brushed off. And so the next step was an EEG. In that EEG, I had to keep him up all night. And then we went in first thing in the morning, and we were there for maybe 5-6 hours. And so they did an awake, and then they let him fall asleep. And they saw that when he was sleeping, he was having a lot of spikes in the EEG. And so then they said that they wanted to do I think it was like a 48-hour EEG. So we went in for the 48-hour EEG, and the same thing. They caught stuff in the nighttime, but nothing during the day. So they came to the conclusion that he was having more seizures in the night and when he was sleep deprived. And so from that point on, they put him on medication, and the medication was, he did 3 different medicines. He was on Lamictal was the first one. And that one we did pretty good on. He did pretty good on it, but then it got to the point where when we had to go up on doses, he started to become like a zombie. He was sleepy all the time. No energy to play. He never wanted to do anything. Like, he just wanted to sleep. And so I went back to Children's and I told him, this isn't working out. All he does is sleep. Like, he has no childhood. So then they put him on Keppra. And Keppra, we were on that for about a week and a half. And he got what a lot of people know as Keppra rage. And so when that happened, he was pulling his own hair out. He was slamming his head into the ground all the time. He was biting me and leaving bruises with his teeth marks. And I couldn't do it. I could not have him, hurting himself. And so I called Children's and I told them we were going in, and they told me that they weren't able to see me. So I went to the emergency room because I thought, I'm not going to take no. I'm not going to have him on this medication any longer. And his neurologist was able to come see us in the emergency room, and he switched us over to zonisamide. And zonisamide, we were on that medication for about 8 years. And so it got to the point where he was still having seizures, and we weren't able to go up on the medication anymore because one of the side effects of that medicine was loss of appetite. And so with him not being hungry, he did not weigh enough to be able to go higher up on the medicine. And we had found out that it was affecting his kidneys.
Oh,
So, yeah, once we heard that, it was like, you know, it was that crossroad of, do we find a new medication and hope his kidneys do okay with the new one, or CBD? And so that's where CBD got introduced. You know, we started researching and trying to find, you know, any kind of information we could about it. In Washington State, it's a green state, but he's underage. And so trying to get help with that was really hard, but we were able to find an amazing naturopathic doctor who was willing to help us.
that's amazing. I've I've said to people that I'm a fan of cannabis. Everyone knows that I believe in the plant. I believe that it has a lot of helpful things. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really great that CBD, you found a doctor that could offer you guys CBD. So how did CBD work for you?
Yeah. So when we started CBD, what the plan was, so we had taken him to Children's and we brought it up to his neurologist. And at that, by the time we were ready to try CBD, the neurologist we had first started seeing was no longer at Children's in Seattle. He relocated. So we had a new doctor, and he said he was big fan of CBD, you know, kept telling us he has seen great results on it. But then we came back for a second appointment and we were ready to make that transition. And it was like a completely different person where he's like, you know, you could go to jail. And I was like, wait a minute, like, I don't understand what's going on. And so he was like, well, I can't help you with CBD. I can't tell you to try it for legal reasons from the hospital. And so once that happened, I was like, well, if we do CBD, we can't come back to Children's because they're not going to help us. And so that's when we found the naturopathic. And when I talked to him, that was one of the last appointments we had with him, because it was about probably May, because he said it would take us about 3 months to wean him off completely the zonisamide. And so we started doing that. We started introducing CBD and lowering the zonisamide, but doing it at the rate that Children said to do it. He started to get swelling in his head. And so we found that out by him seeing an osteopath.
Oh, okay. Once you were able to get your son off of the zonisamide, and you did CBD, what was the difference between, you know, pharmaceuticals for your son and drug procedures and things like that versus using CBD?
Well, him being on zonisamide, the biggest thing was it affecting his kidneys, and then his appetite. He was about 7, 8 years old, and he weighed close to 40 pounds. Like, he was so underweight. And there were so many nights where I'm like, you cannot leave the kitchen table until you eat. And he would just fall asleep at the table because he had no appetite at all. And so once we switched over to CBD, he just started eating. And I was like, slow down, because he was so excited to have all these different foods and he felt great while he was eating. And so I think that was one of the biggest ones also, was him having an appetite. And he was, you know, he started to become more active, and just, he had jokes, and like, it was like my little boy was coming back, because before we started zonisamide, he was so outgoing and funny and bubbly, and he was still those things on zonisamide, just not every day. And it was hard because I think the medicine made him feel, I guess you could say, kind of shy. It made him shut down a little bit. And so starting CBD and him just, you know, opening up and being a regular kid, who, it was like night and day, because zonisamide, he had no energy. You know, he did judo and stuff like that, but it was just, it was not the, he didn't have a sparkle in his eye, I guess you could say. But once we started CBD, that sparkle started to come back. And with seeing an osteopath also, it just really helped with any side effects that he was having from switching to CBD and coming off the niacinamide. So CBD has just gave him appetite, made him open up. It changed everything.
That's amazing. You know, we started our daughter on CBD about a year and a half ago. And within just a couple of days of her taking CBD, her teacher was texting me. She's like, I don't know what's going on, but she's just so like her personality is like so sweet. And because like my daughter, she had a lot of behavioral issues. And so she's like, you know, her personality is so sweet, being so mature. She's like, we thought for sure she was going to have a meltdown over something, and she didn't. And I just wanted to let you know she's doing so well. And so, I mean, I hear this all the time from parents, you know, that CBD or you know, or medicinal marijuana in some states, because it just really depends on the child what kind of ratio they need. I've heard this from so many parents that CBD has been a game changer for their kids. And so I just think this is amazing. So how is your son now? What is he? He just turned 13. So what's the news with him now?
Well, he's still doing judo. They just started that back up. They shut, and you know, everything has shut down because of COVID. And so he's just now getting back to judo, and he's a homebody. So him being, you know, us having to stay home, he's living his best life. He loves to be home, but he likes to play video games now, when before he never played video games. That was something, I think it just didn't make him feel too well. And so he never played video games. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, turn off the TV, because he just loves to play video games. And, you know, he loves to ride his bike. He's just, you know, does things other kids do, when before he didn't do that stuff. So it's been amazing. And school wise, when he was on all of the pharmaceuticals, with having a 504 plan and all of the, I went blank, the 504 plan and the IEP plan. Yeah, the IEP. We struggled a lot, and he had a hard time at the elementary school he was in, because he needed that extra time by himself. And for tests, he needed more time. You know, it was just that being on the spot made him nervous, and then he didn't feel good. And so he went, this year was middle school, and I was so nervous. I thought, oh my gosh, middle school, it's going to totally overwhelm him. He's not going to know what to do. And I was just so worried. But it was also our first year on no pharmaceutical medicine. It was only CBD that he was on. And he killed it. He got straight A's and B's, and he loved it. I would ask him, are you okay? Do you feel overwhelmed? And he's like, no. He's like, it's so much easier than elementary. Like, he loves going to school now.
Wow, that's amazing. Something that I was talking about recently is that, and I think we even said it on the show, is that, you know, when it comes to like having your child who has epilepsy or has any type of special need, like school isn't the same for us as it is for everyone else. It is a hard thing. Like school's already, like when you're just a regular kid, school is just hard in general. And like middle school, like I can't, you know, it's as a mom, it's hard because, you know, my kid doesn't hit the same kind of milestones. First day of school pictures are awful. You know, we usually do third day of school pictures because she's usually crying in the morning. But now my daughter, for her, the difference was teachers. And when she finally found a good teacher, things changed. A really good, my daughter's in life skills. A really good life skills teacher for my daughter made the difference. So I'm glad that your son can enjoy school, because I mean, it really, the being able to have those experiences and have that socialization is so great.
Yeah.
And, so 13, is he in 7th grade now?
He just finished 7th grade. He's going into 8th grade now.
Oh yeah, so 8th grade's a good year too. I remember 8th grade. My daughter just finished 8th grade, so she's going to be in high school this year, which is crazy to me, but that's a story for another time. So we connected through a Facebook group. There's some Facebook groups out there. Some are really great, like your group, and we'll just talk about your group. Your group is called, I'm going to put it on the screen, Parents of Kids with Epilepsy and Seizures. And you've been the admin for a few years now. And it's such a, for me, when my daughter was in the hospital, that group helped to get me through it. Like my friend Ida was there. We all know Ida. I could talk to her. I could go into the group. I can ask questions. I can say how frustrated I am. I share my reading, and everybody was just so supportive while my daughter was in the hospital at the time. So that's how I got connected to you, because you're the admin of that group. So what I think you do with this group is amazing. So would you like to talk about this group?
Yeah, thank you so much. So the group I joined about 4 years ago, and about 6 months being in the group, I was asked to become an admin. And so I said, of course. And then the 2 other ladies I was admins with had to step away, to have more time with their children that were, not doing as well as my son was. And so it was a big responsibility, but it was something that I hold so near to my heart, because when I was going through this with my son, I felt really alone. Like my husband would go to some appointments, but I think he wasn't ever as worried as I was, because he wasn't there for the first seizure. And that to me was so traumatic that I would do anything and everything I needed to do for my son, so we didn't get to that point again, or have such a big seizure like that where he would stop breathing. And so this group became that for me. It became that support, and it became where I could go and I could just post how I was feeling, and other people understood where I was coming from. And it wasn't like, oh, you're being really dramatic right now or anything like that. It was love and care, and people would private message me, and it's just become something where I love to meet all of these parents. I don't like that we have to meet, in the support group, but it just makes me feel so good knowing that I'm able to help other parents. And I'm able, because when you get that diagnosis of epilepsy and you're just overwhelmed and confused and you don't know what to do, everything, it's like tunnel vision. You don't see the bigger picture. You don't see, things that you would probably catch instantly if you weren't in that situation. And so being able to help other parents and to just let them know you're not alone and you can call me. I've had parents call me in the middle of the night, and I will go to the living room and chat with them and just let them know you're not alone. And it's okay to be afraid, because it's something that, as you know firsthand, like you just never know what's going to happen the next day.
Yeah.
And so it's just being able to be there and support other parents and know that I'm making some kind of a difference. It's the best feeling ever.
No, and it's a great group, and you have thousands of people in this group.
Yeah, we have 7,000 members, a little over 7,000 people.
Yeah. It's a big group, and I just love the support that you can get. Like I've seen parents post in there, like my daughter had a seizure this morning. My husband was at work. I'm home alone. I'm I'm freaking out. I've got doctors coming, I've got doctors calling me back, and just to see the outpour of just like 30 comments instantly, and once the seizure's over and your child is post-ictal, they're sleeping. Most of the time they're sleeping if they've had a tonic-clonic. Yeah. And, you just sit there and you're like, your warrior is resting from battle. That's what that is. But yourself, your adrenaline is pumping. I usually am shaking by the end of it. After, it's for me, it's like a total switch. Like when my daughter has a seizure, it's like it's a switch in my brain, and I do what I need to do to get her to survive the seizure. And then afterward, after I've realized that she's, come out of the seizure, we've entered post-ictal state. For my daughter, it's about 4 hours. I know she's asleep for about 24 hours. And I'm climbing the walls and have that kind of connection with people who understand what you just went through. It is, I don't even know that, like, I don't think I have a right word here. It's so, it's not calming. It's just there. Like it's something,
it's comforting.
Thank you. That's the word. That's hello. So it's such a comfort, and it's such a good place to be if you're in this, if you find yourself in this situation, So, but part of what we talk about with Warrior Moms is that, again, this is stressful. This is an incredibly stressful situation to be in. And something that I'm a big proponent of is doing, self-care, taking time for yourself, having hobbies, having things to do. So obviously your group is one of those things, that really gives you some fulfillment, and that's for you and helping other parents. And, I have Warrior Moms. That's for me. It makes me feel better to know that I'm helping somebody, or maybe helping somebody. But I see something in the background of your shelf there. I see something that says Warrior Moms Community. So you want to tell me about that?
So I make signs, wood signs, decals, stuff like that. And it's just something that I got the machine from my mom so I could do signs for my sister's baby shower. And I was like, it just took off. So I make signs, and I made this sign for you. I'm trying to get it right in there where you can see it. And I will be sending it to you in the mail so you have it.
That is so cool. I love it. So I'm going to add it to my collection back here. So I don't know if I can see, like, I've got my canvas leaf, all kinds of different things people give me. My decor is gifts. It's just like, that's what I choose. It's just, if it's there, I'm going to have it forever. And I think my love language is gift giving too. So that's more of what it is. But I love to go up there with my collection of things. Okay. It's really hard to get backwards. So,
I know.
So I think we have my friend Susan popped on. Who says, "Hey, ladies," I'm going to put her, because we've got a new streaming service. So I'm going to put her comment on the screen. Because, like, isn't that? I mean, I feel like
that's awesome.
So I really appreciate coming onto the show, and that you run this group, that you do all these different things, and you're also a member of my community, Warrior Moms Community. So we will put links to everything. And I feel, did I forget to ask you a question? Let me look at I feel like I may have forgot to ask you a question. So before we get so out of here, there we go. Where are my questions? So we do self-care. We talk about your story, things like that. And so wait, so what do you like to do now that you have, that's a question. So now that your son has taken CBD, and he's seizure free right now, isn't he?
Yeah, he, as of about 2 weeks ago, he has been off of CBD and doing amazing. And I'm the same way you were earlier, where I'm like, are you okay? Are you okay? How are you feeling? And so it's like trying to come up with a new question, because as soon as I say Papa, he's like, stop. I'm fine. Like, he already knows. So I'm like, well, if you don't want me to ask, you come and check in with me, let me know you're okay, because it's just one of those things where I get so anxious, and I'm like, I haven't heard him in a while, or he's playing video games, and I'll go in there, how are you doing? Are you feeling okay? Are you playing too much video games? Or how's your head feel? Because it's just, that thought in the back of my head of, he's not on any medication, and I want to be even more, hovering over him. But now that he's not on medication, he wants to just live his life. So it's hard to let that happen.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I constantly ask my kid, my husband, he's been home since COVID happened because he's in the restaurant industry, so he was impacted. And then my brother actually lives with us. So we have a weird like family thing. Like my brother's here and his kids, and then me and my daughter and my husband. We have plenty of room, so it works out for us, and it's good for me because with my husband in the restaurant industry, having somebody home to help me with Scarlett if she does have a seizure is really, really helpful. But I constantly hear like my brother or my husband, and like I guess if Scarlett's in a different area of the house or they maybe have her go back to her, he's like, Scarlett, are you okay? Scarlett, hey kid, what's going on? So like I think it's just all of us have experienced it, and it's going back to what you had talked about with the PTSD. That's really what it is. It's my daughter gets annoyed just the same as your son. And so sometimes I just start like, my new thing, and maybe you can try this, is I start to ask my daughter where the remote is. So that way she comes in and I'm like, she's okay. So
that's a good one. I'll have to remember that.
Yeah. So, I ask her for random objects. I'm like, okay, Scarlett, mommy can't find the remote. Can you come help me? Or like, where's my phone? And so that's some of the things that I do is get less annoyed. And so I sound less helicopter mommy. And so, so we've got people commenting. Renee says, this is great info and support. Well, thank you, Renee. I'm going to put your comment on there because I just love this little feature. And if anybody has any questions, we'll keep it open for just a few more minutes. After that, we'll go ahead and close it out. And if you have any questions or comments, just put #replay, and then we'll come back and answer it. But a little bit of announcements for next week. Next week, we have Sarah Washington on the show. She's going to come in. She's another warrior mom. She, like you, Esperanza, she has a naturopathic doctor, things like that. So she wants to talk about her warrior mom's journey and how she's found alternative treatments and things like that. And then, moving forward, we've got a lot of great things happening, a lot of great things coming in the works. And, I found somebody, I connected with somebody in my neighborhood, actually, and who has a t-shirt business that she's trying to get off the ground. And so we've got Warrior Mom swag coming, so we can have shirts for both moms and dads too, if they want, and as well as our warriors can have matching shirts. So we've got that we're working on in the background. I recently connected with another epilepsy group here in the Houston area. Well, it's actually in Galveston, which is next to Houston. And so we're going to be working on stuff with them. And there's just a lot of great things coming up for this Warrior Moms community. So that way we can really build, and we're not just going to, I guess we're just not going to talk about it. We're going to do it. We're all warriors. We're all people who get shit done. And so we're going to make sure like we fight for our kids, and we are going to fight for each other. So that's our show for tonight. Esperanza, thank you so much for last week, your patience, and then again for popping back on this week. I'm so glad to be with you, and I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story, sharing your son's story. And I know we'll be in contact in the future. So I'm so grateful to your group and to everything that you do. And so
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Everybody, I hope you have a great evening. Thank you for tuning in. If you're watching on the replay, do #replay. Everybody have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Bye.